My name is Daniel King. I'm 58 years old, a retired fire chief from a small town in Missouri. I've pulled people out of burning buildings, driven through hurricanes, and stood between panicked crowds and collapsing rooftops. But nothing, and I mean nothing, burned as deeply as the betrayal I faced in my own home. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. I had just come back from my usual walk down by the river. The sun was rising, coffee was brewing, and everything felt peaceful. Until I noticed my office door ajar. I never leave that door open. Ever. I stepped inside and froze. My filing cabinet was pulled out halfway. The small hidden safe under my desk? Open. Completely emptied. All my documents gone. My service medals? Gone. The $7,000 in emergency cash I kept tucked behind the wall panel? Vanished. My first thought wasn't anger. It was confusion. How? Who even knew about that? Only family. That was the moment my stomach sank. Because the only people who had access to that room were my daughter and her husband. They'd been staying with me for the past 3 months, ever since he lost his job and they couldn't afford rent. I let them move in without hesitation. Gave them the upstairs bedroom, a car to use, even stocked the fridge with their favorites. I believed in second chances. And now here I was, standing in the middle of my ransacked office, with silence buzzing in my ears. The worst part? Nothing was broken. No sign of forced entry. Whoever did this had keys, had time, had confidence. I checked the backyard camera feed. Offline. I checked the garage sensor. Disabled. I checked the guest key rack. 1 copy missing. It wasn't a burglary. It was a betrayal. I remember sitting on the edge of my desk, staring at that empty safe, and whispering just one thing to myself. He really thought I wouldn't notice. But he didn't know me as well as he thought. Because you see, when someone betrays you, your first instinct is to lash out. But I've learned from years in the field, the most effective fire suppression isn't water. It's patience. And what he didn't know is that I had already suspected him. And I had already started recording. I didn't say a word that morning. I just made a call. And what happened next, he never saw coming. Before all this, before suspicion turned into certainty, I genuinely believed I was doing the right thing. For my daughter, for our family. Her name is Emily. She's 27 now. Always been strong-willed, compassionate, and full of light. When she was a kid, she used to run around the firehouse like she owned it, wearing a plastic helmet and pretending to put out fires with a garden hose. I still remember how proud she was the first time she saw me in uniform. She said I was her real-life superhero. And I tried to be. For her always. When she met Kyle, her husband, I won't lie, I had my reservations. He was smooth, overly charming, the kind of guy who says all the right things at the right times. Too polished, too practiced. But Emily fell for him hard, and I chose to trust her judgment. She was an adult. She said he treated her well, supported her dreams, and made her laugh again after a painful breakup. That was enough for me, at the time. They got married 2 years ago. Small ceremony. Backyard, string lights, cheap wine, and happy tears. I gave her away with a proud smile, even though something in my gut was uneasy. I figured it was just a father being protective. For a while, they seemed okay. Kyle worked in marketing at some mid-sized firm, and Emily was teaching art at a local middle school. They didn't have much, but they had each other. That's what I thought. Then last year, things began to shift. First, Kyle lost his job. Said it was restructuring. Then their lease ended suddenly. Then there was some mix-up with their bank account. Always some excuse, always a new crisis. I didn't ask too many questions. I just offered help. That's what parents do, right? I let them move into the guest room. Gave them full access to the house. Kyle offered to do repairs around the place, claiming he had plenty of time now and wanted to repay me somehow. He was friendly, almost too friendly. Always asking about the layout of the house, the garage, my old military keepsakes. Said he loved history. I didn't think too much of it at first. He'd joke around with me, try to bond like we were buddies. Asked me once how much I kept in cash, just in case of emergencies. I brushed it off. Emily, meanwhile, was working double shifts at school and taking freelance art gigs to keep them afloat. I admired her hustle. But I started to notice something. Kyle never seemed tired. Never seemed stressed. Just detached. Like he was biding time. Still, I kept the peace. I told myself I was reading too much into things. That maybe I was just a lonely old man clinging to control. But the final crack appeared the day I caught him walking out of my office. It was subtle. He claimed he was looking for a pen. But my desk drawer had been disturbed, and my small notebook, the one with my safe code scribbled on the last page, was moved. That's when I started watching. I didn't confront him. I didn't even tell Emily. Instead, I quietly updated the security system, installed new cameras, including one hidden in the front mailbox and another in an old clock on the shelf. I checked my file cabinet daily. I began locking up anything important, keeping track of who entered and when. Days passed. Then weeks. Nothing obvious. He played the same friendly role, made dinner sometimes, helped in the yard, laughed at my jokes. But every time I looked in his eyes, I saw something I couldn't explain. Calculation. Then, just when I started thinking maybe I was wrong, that maybe I was just getting paranoid with age, it happened. The safe was emptied. The medals from my first fire rescue? Gone. The Purple Heart I got for pulling 2 men from a collapsed stairwell during the East Ridge chemical fire? Gone. Documents, titles, bank slips, all missing. And Kyle? Nowhere to be found that morning. He'd stepped out to grab coffee. Yeah, coffee. That was the exact moment I knew this wasn't just theft. It was betrayal, with a handshake and a smile. I stayed quiet, but I watched every move he made. And one night, at exactly 2:41 a.m., the truth showed up in high definition. After discovering the safe had been emptied, I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. I'd been in enough chaotic scenes to know that emotion clouds judgment. And if there was one thing I needed now, it was clarity. So I stayed silent, watched, waited. Every movement, every interaction in that house became a detail I filed away like evidence in an investigation. Kyle came home that afternoon carrying a cardboard tray with 3 coffees and a half-eaten donut. He was wearing the same smug smile as always, cracking jokes about how long the drive-through line was and how he almost left the car there, out of frustration. He handed me my coffee, looked me right in the eye, and said, "You're the rock in this family, Dan. I mean that." I nodded. Didn't say much. But that was the moment I decided I'd give him just enough rope to hang himself. Over the next few days, I paid attention to the little things, his late-night walks, his sudden interest in helping around the garage, the way he always glanced over at the bookshelf where I kept certain documents. I noticed his patterns. He stayed up late when Emily was asleep. Slept in long after she left for work. He'd be glued to his phone, scrolling, messaging, even smirking at times. Once, I caught him snapping a photo of the utility closet. When he saw me watching, he pretended to be taking a selfie. That night, I reviewed the footage from the hidden camera in the clock. Nothing too obvious, just him lingering a bit too long near my locked desk drawer, trying keys when he thought no one was watching. But I was watching. Every hour. Every day. Emily, bless her heart, was completely unaware. She was working double shifts and coming home exhausted. She still believed in Kyle. She believed in them. And I hated that I couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet. Not without proof that would leave no room for denial. One night, around 2:41 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion alert. I rolled out of bed, pulled up the live feed from the mailbox cam. There he was, Kyle, outside, wearing gloves, hoodie on, unlocking my garage door with a spare key. He slipped inside like a ghost. No flashlight. No noise. Just silence. But the camera inside the garage caught everything. He moved straight to the tool cabinet, opened it, pulled out something I hadn't touched in years, a small metal box that used to hold old war photos and some personal savings. I'd emptied it a while ago, but apparently he didn't know that. He opened the box, looked inside, and froze. He saw the note I left there. It said, "This is the second time you searched where you don't belong. I'm watching." He slammed the lid shut, looked around like a panicked animal, then bolted. The next morning, he was unusually quiet. Didn't bring coffee. Didn't smile. When I asked how he slept, he mumbled, "Didn't really." I just nodded and sipped my coffee. The pressure was building. I could feel it in the air, like smoke before a flashover. But I wasn't going to be the one to set the fire. No, I wanted him to burn himself with his own choices. I planted another trap, a decoy folder labeled Estate Documents, in my bedroom closet. It wasn't locked, just barely hidden. Inside, a blank folder and a tracker tag no bigger than a bottle cap. 3 nights later, it was gone. I traced the tag to his car, hidden in the trunk, stuffed inside a backpack. And in that backpack, my Purple Heart, along with a copy of my will, forged with his name scratched in under. Beneficiary. It was official now. He wasn't just stealing. He was planning something deeper, maybe even trying to manipulate my estate, set up some kind of scam, or worse, make it look like I was losing my mind. And that's when I knew. He was never just freeloading. He was hunting. I didn't cry that night. I didn't confront him. I started planning. And the first thing I did was call someone who owed me a favor from a fire I never forgot. That night changed everything. I sat in the garage long after I confirmed what I saw. The Purple Heart, the forged document, the tracker ping. I didn't feel rage, just a kind of hollow stillness, the way a room feels after the smoke has cleared but the damage remains. This wasn't just some petty theft. Kyle had plans. Plans involving my death, my money, my legacy. And he was arrogant enough to think I'd never figure it out. But he forgot who he was dealing with. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't even call Emily. I simply made one phone call. Just one. "Hey, Chief. Long time," the voice on the other end said. It was Thomas Brandt. We served together in the department before he transferred into private security after retirement. He owed me his life, I dragged him out of a stairwell collapse during a factory explosion back in '06. I need you to help me catch a snake, I told him. Quietly. Send me what you've got, he replied without hesitation. Over the next few hours, I compiled everything. The footage, the photos, the forged will, even the footage of Kyle entering the garage. We mapped out a plan, one that would give Kyle the illusion of control for just a little longer, long enough to bury himself. But while the logistics moved forward, my mind couldn't help but drift to my daughter. Emily had no idea the man she shared a bed with was slowly dismantling her family. She believed in love, in second chances, in the good inside people. I raised her that way. And now that very faith had become the weapon used against her. The next morning, I watched Kyle like I always did, except now, every glance, every breath he took felt like borrowed time. He smiled at Emily, kissed her on the cheek, told her he'd take care of a few things that day. Then he winked at me. That wink. It was so casual, so smug, like he thought he was already 10 steps ahead. I just smiled back. The same calm expression I'd worn 100 times before charging into a fire I knew might collapse on top of me. Only this time, the building wasn't mine. It was his. Later that evening, Kyle returned early. Said he had a surprise for Emily. Something about a trip he was planning, a romantic getaway. He brought her roses. Cheap ones. The kind they sell last minute near the checkout aisle. She looked touched. I felt sick. But I held my tongue. Because I knew exactly what was coming. I had just received the final confirmation from Thomas. The bait was set. All we had to do now was let Kyle bite. And bite he would. Because in just 24 hours, I'd be handing him an envelope that looked like the golden key he'd been digging for since the day he moved into my home. What was inside? Not money. Not deeds. Not estate plans. Just a flash drive. And on that flash drive was his downfall. He opened that envelope thinking he was about to secure his future. Instead, he signed its death certificate. Kyle had no idea he was walking straight into a storm I'd already mapped out down to the second. For a man who thought he was cunning, he underestimated the value of patience. That's where he made his first real mistake. I spent the next day preparing every detail. The envelope, the flash drive, the trackers, the silent phone recordings, they were all parts of the same web. Every corner of my house had already become a trap. Every accidental conversation, every misplaced paper, every file I left out in plain sight, it was all intentional. And Kyle, drunk on confidence, was devouring it. I started by feeding him exactly what he was hoping for, a conversation. At breakfast, I casually mentioned that I was updating my estate plan. I told him, turning 59 next week, figured it's time I finally finished the trust paperwork. He didn't say much, just raised an eyebrow and nodded. But he was listening. I could see his fork stop midair. That was all I needed. Later that afternoon, I left a folder labeled Revocable Living Trust 2024 in the cabinet. Inside, dummy documents, fake financial statements, a list of hidden assets, things I didn't even own. The numbers were big, the kind that would make someone greedy stop thinking rationally. I also slipped in a forged letter, completely fabricated, claiming I planned to give everything to Emily and nothing to her husband. It was bait dipped in poison. By evening, the folder was gone. Not misplaced. Not moved. Gone. I checked the tracker I'd hidden in its spine. It was on the move, right inside his car. That night, Thomas came by quietly. We sat in the garage with the door closed. He brought two things: a compact surveillance recorder the size of a cigarette lighter, and a tiny button Ken disguised as a shirt pin. "Wear this tomorrow," he said. "If he confronts you about the documents, we'll have him on audio and video. No deniability." I nodded and placed the cam on the collar of a flannel shirt I knew Kyle had complimented before. I wanted him to feel like it was just another normal day. The next morning, it all began. Kyle approached me in the kitchen. He was playing it casual, trying to smile. But I could see the shift in him. He was no longer pretending to be my son-in-law. He was hunting again. He said, "I saw some paperwork in your cabinet last night. Just wanted to say, Emily and we've always appreciated your support." I looked him in the eye. Calm. Measured. "You know, Kyle," I said, "money's not what matters most. It's legacy. What we leave behind, our name, our honor." He smiled and said, "Right. Of course." Then I handed him the envelope. He took it without question. Inside was a flash drive. Nothing else. He asked, "What's this?" I said, "Just something to think about. If you're really part of this family, you'll understand what's on it." That was it. I walked away. He didn't open it immediately. He waited until later that night, after Emily had gone to bed. I know because I stayed up, watching the mailbox cam on my phone, waiting for the notification. At exactly 11:13 p.m., he snuck into the garage again, sat in his car, plugged the flash drive into his laptop, and just like that, he saw it. The first file was labeled, "You've been watched." He clicked it. The screen went black. Then a series of clips began to play. Footage of him entering my office. Footage of him opening the metal box in the garage. A time-stamped screen recording of his forged signature on my will. Still images of every stolen document he had hidden in his backpack. GPS location logs tracking the missing items. And finally, a 5-second clip of me looking straight into the camera. I said, "You were right about one thing, Kyle. I am old. But I didn't get to 58 by being stupid." I wish I could have seen his face. Instead, I saw what happened next. He ran into the house at 11:28 p.m., quietly packed a duffel bag, and tried to sneak out the back door. But by then, the police were already pulling into the driveway. Thomas had tipped off the authorities with every legal file they needed. I made sure all evidence was clean, properly cataloged, and time-stamped. No ambiguity. No loopholes. When they cuffed Kyle in front of the garage, he didn't say a word. Not a single word. Emily woke up during the commotion. Stumbled out in her robe. Confused. Scared. She saw the lights, the officers, the handcuffs. Then she looked at me. What's going on?" she whispered. I walked over, placed my hand on her shoulder, and simply said, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. But the man you married tried to rob the man who raised you." She didn't cry right away. But when she did, it wasn't just grief. It was relief. Like somewhere deep down, she already knew. The man who thought he had everything figured out had just been outplayed by the very person he underestimated most. The next morning, the house felt like a crime scene, and in many ways, it was. Kyle was gone. Hauled away in handcuffs, facing multiple charges: theft, attempted fraud, falsifying legal documents, and trespassing. The evidence I'd gathered, clean, direct, and undeniable, was enough to make any defense lawyer hesitate. He had no way out. No one to pin it on. No, I didn't know. No, it was a misunderstanding. Just the truth, caught frame by frame in his own hands. Emily was broken. She hadn't said much that night, just sat on the edge of the guest bed staring into nothing. I didn't push her. I just made coffee like I always did and left it by her door. She didn't touch it. She didn't need caffeine. She needed clarity, time, and maybe space from the world she thought she'd built. By noon, the news had spread. In a town this size, word gets around fast. A few of my old firehouse buddies dropped by. None of them said, "I told you so." They just gave me those silent nods, the kind men give when they know you did what had to be done. That evening, I got a call from the county prosecutor. "Dan," he said, "this case is airtight. Honestly, it's one of the cleanest internal family fraud cases I've seen. You handled this better than most professionals." I thanked him, not because I needed praise, but because I needed to hear someone say it out loud. I wasn't crazy. The court date was set for the following week. Kyle didn't make bail. The DA argued he was a flight risk. I agreed. Emily didn't visit him in jail. She barely spoke about him. Instead, she threw herself into her art. Stayed up late painting, blasting music in the garage like she used to when she was a teenager. The pain was real, but so was the freedom. I watched her slowly come back to life. The courtroom was quiet the day of the hearing. Just the echo of footsteps on polished floors and the occasional shuffle of paper. Kyle walked in, looking thinner, eyes hollow, still wearing that artificial calm he always used when he thought he could talk his way out of anything. The judge asked if there were any preliminary statements. I raised my hand. "Permission to present evidence," I said, sliding a flash drive across the desk. The bailiff took it, plugged it in. The courtroom screen lit up. First clip, Kyle entering my office late at night. Second, him stealing from my safe. Third, his forged version of my will, next to the original. Final, my short message, looking straight into the hidden camera. "You were right about one thing, Kyle. I am old. But I didn't get to 58 by being stupid." The courtroom was silent. Even the judge leaned back in his chair, blinking slowly. Kyle didn't even try to deny it. His lawyer sat motionless, already defeated. The only sound in the room was Emily, quietly exhaling, like her lungs had finally remembered how to breathe. He was sentenced that same day. Minimum 3 years with no early parole. Fines, restitution, and a permanent stain on his record. And just like that, the man who thought he could rob a family and rewrite someone else's legacy was left with nothing but a jumpsuit and a number. We walked out of that courthouse into the sun. Emily turned to me and whispered, "How did you stay so calm through all of this?" I smiled and said, "Because fire doesn't panic me. It focuses me." He thought he'd taken everything, but he left behind the one thing that mattered most, the truth. And with that, I rebuilt. It's been almost a year now. The house is quieter. Not empty, just peaceful. There are no more late-night footsteps, no suspicious glances, no anxiety about what I might find missing in the morning. The doors creak like they always did. The coffee still brews at 6 a.m. sharp. The sun still rises over the same oak trees in the backyard. But everything feels different, safer. Emily stayed with me for a few months after the court case. She needed time to grieve, to process, to understand how someone she trusted could hollow out her life from the inside. But she healed. Slowly, then suddenly. She picked up more hours at the school, started painting murals again. Her laugh came back, hesitant at first, but stronger each time. One day, I walked into the garage and found a painting leaning against the wall. It was a firehouse. My old firehouse. With a helmet on a hook, and the silhouette of a father holding his daughter's hand just outside the engine bay. No signature. No frame. Just color, emotion, and memory. That's when I knew we'd both survive this. People ask me sometimes if I regret letting Kyle into my home. If I regret trusting him. And to be honest, I don't. Because without that trust, I never would have seen how far I'd come. I used to believe strength was about charging into chaos. Now I know real strength is knowing when to stay still, when to watch, and when to act with quiet precision. Kyle took things from me, yes. He took medals, documents, dignity, peace of mind. But what he couldn't take was who I am. He couldn't touch the part of me that gets up every morning, makes black coffee in the old chip mug, and watches the trees dance in the wind without fear. He thought robbing me would break me. Instead, it became the moment I sharpened. Emily once asked me if I forgave him. I said, "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means I don't carry him with me anymore." And I don't. The safe has been replaced. The cameras are upgraded. The locks are tighter. But the biggest change? I listen to my gut now. Not paranoia, instinct. The kind of instinct that only comes after walking through a fire and realizing the ashes didn't destroy you. They revealed you. If you're watching this, and you've been betrayed by someone close, someone who smiled while they hollowed out your trust, I'll tell you this. You don't need to burn down your life to feel safe again. You just need to remember who you are. And protect that person with everything you got. Because that's the part they can never steal. He took everything, except my soul. And from that, I rebuilt my life, not for revenge, not even for justice. I rebuilt it for me.